Florence, Italy. Early autumn. Golden light spilled across the marble floors of Whitmore Finance Europe. The kind of light that softened even the sharpest corners of the glass-walled office. But nothing softened the man standing silently in front of the window. Tyrone Whitmore had the kind of presence that bent a room without speaking. Tall, impeccably dressed, crisp white shirt rolled to the elbows, as if he had been wrestling with numbers or ghosts. Maybe both. He carried that familiar weight from his family empire, the quiet pressure to be unbreakable, strategic, untouchable. Florence was supposed to be his escape, a temporary one, but an escape nonetheless. Until he saw her. He didn't hear Marco's footsteps at first. He didn't hear anything, actually. The world narrowed into a single point. The woman standing by the far desk, her back turned. Slightly, sleeves rolled neatly, fingers dancing across her keyboard, with composed precision. Callista Jones. He didn't know her name yet, but something in him reacted, an involuntary tightening inside his chest, like memory trying to surface. She looked up, and the world no time hesitated. Her eyes were dark, calm, deliberate. Not startled, not curious. Almost braced, as if she had seen him long before this moment and was ready for its impact. It hit him anyway, before he could process it, before he could even exhale. Marco stepped between them with his usual breezy energy. Tyrone, that's the new project liaison I told you about. Marco waved. Callista Jones. Efficient, terrifyingly competent, very polite, unless you miss a deadline. A small smile appeared on her lips. Not warm, but professional. Contained. Good morning, Mr. Whitmore. Her voice was smooth, low-tinged with something that made Tyrone's stomach tighten. A tone he had heard before. A tone he remembered. He blinked, but the memory slipped like water through fingers. Callista lowered her gaze quickly, but not fast enough to hide the flicker of recognition. Real sharp, undeniable. She felt it too. Not attraction, not fear, memory. But how? From where he searched his mind. But the moment dissolved as Marco began explaining schedules and upcoming inspections. Still, Tyrone's attention remained pinned to her. The way she held herself, gentle yet fortified, sent a shiver of familiarity through him. He couldn't explain. He only realized he hadn't spoken when she excused herself. I'll prepare the updated reports for your review this afternoon. She moved past him, her perfume lingering like a memory he was supposed to recognize, but didn't. A soft floral scent restrained, yet lingering, something he remembered from a night blurred by whiskey-cold rain in a hotel hallway in Rome. No. Impossible. He pushed the thought away. He had been reckless that night. Reckless enough that much of it was lost to haze, but not reckless enough to forget the silhouette of the woman who had helped him forget himself for an hour. Or two. And yet something inside him whispered, "It's her." Callista kept walking, pulse tight beneath her calm exterior. She could feel his gaze burning between her shoulder blades, the same way she had felt it 5 years ago, inside that dimly lit hotel bar. She had promised herself this moment would never happen, that the man who had unknowingly given her the two great loves of her life would remain a name without a face. But fate, cruel and elegant, had other plans. She slipped into the small break room, placing both palms on the counter, breathing once, slowly, deliberately. She had expected to see him again someday, maybe on a television segment or a magazine cover. But not like this. Not across a conference room. Not with that same pair of storm gray eyes that once looked at her as if she were the only warm thing in a frozen world. Her throat tightened. He didn't recognize her. Of course he wouldn't. Their night had been brief, unexpected, and painfully unbalanced. She had been vulnerable after an ugly breakup. He had been drowning in family obligations and too much alcohol. Two lost strangers colliding. But she remembered everything, especially the morning after waking in a cold hotel room, sheets still warm from his body, a note on the bedside table with no name, no number. Just a sentence, "I hope life is kinder to you than it has been to me." Life had not been kind, but it had given her her children. She inhaled, steadying herself before stepping back into the hallway. Her phone vibrated. 2 messages. "Amir, Mommy, can we visit you at office today? Please, Arya. We made something for you. And maybe for Mr. Boss, too." A soft laugh escaped Callista's lips. Her twins always sensed when she needed grounding. They didn't know what she was facing today, but they had impeccable instinct. She texted back quickly. "Later, babies. Mommy's busy today. I love you both." But the warmth the messages brought couldn't erase the fact that danger had arrived. Not the kind that threatened safety, no. This was the dangerous kind that tugged at the carefully stitched seams of her life. The kind that revived memories meant to stay buried. Because if Tyrann Whitmore ever discovered the truth, it wouldn't just shake him. It would destroy the fragile peace she had built. Back in his office, Tyrann watched her from behind the glass as she coordinated meetings, answered calls, directed teams like a quiet storm. She wasn't loud. She didn't need to be. Everything about her radiated precision and strength. But beneath the professionalism, something felt guarded. He recognized guarded people. He was one. When she handed him the afternoon reports, their fingers brushed. It was a second, barely that, but it hit with the force of a collision. An electric jolt, a memory flashing, her skin, her breath. A hotel window fogged. Callista jerked her hand back gently, but not before he saw it, the flicker of fear in her eyes. Or was it pain? "Are you all right?" he asked, softer than intended. She blinked. "Of course, sir." But the lie hung in the air. He knew lies. This one tasted like truth wrapped in armor. When she turned to leave, he found himself speaking before thinking. "Have we met before?" She froze, only for a breath. Then she turned, expression neutral, unreadable, perfectly composed. "I don't believe so, Mr. Whitmore. A lie. A beautiful one. A necessary one." He studied her, frustrated by the strange ache tugging inside him. "No," he said quietly. "I think we have." Her eyes flickered just for a fraction of a heartbeat before she bowed her head slightly. "Permission to return to my station." He let her go. But the question gnawed at him long after she disappeared behind the glass walls. There was something she wasn't telling him. Something important. That evening, just as Callista was shutting down her computer, a small commotion echoed by the lobby doors. Children's voices. Her blood ran cold. No, not today, not now. She rushed toward the entrance faster than she should have, just in time to see 2 small figures running across the polished floor. Amir and Arya, her twins. "Mommy," they shouted in unison. Callista knelt, gathering them tightly before anyone else could look too closely, before anyone could notice. But she wasn't fast enough. Behind her, Tyrann's footsteps slowed. He stopped, stared, at 2 children with familiar storm-gray eyes, the same eyes reflected in the mirror every morning when he shaved. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Callista." Her breath caught. Everything she had feared was now standing an arm's length behind her. The truth, raw, inevitable, hovered between them. And that was when the lights flickered. A power surge. The entire floor went momentarily dark, a perfect moment for secrets to surface or explode. The silence in the lobby stretched taut as a held breath. Tyrann stood, frozen eyes fixed on the 2 children clutching Callista's hands. The girl Arya had his eyes. So did the boy. No question. No room for doubt. It was like looking into a mirror shrunk in time. But what shattered him wasn't just the uncanny resemblance, it was the way Callista had gone pale, her lips parted in shock, as if the whole world had tilted under her feet. She hadn't meant for this to happen. The twins looked up at him innocently, unaware of the storm gathering behind their mother's eyes. "Hi," the boy said cheerfully. "Are you Mommy's boss?" Callista pulled them closer. "We're leaving," she said, her voice clipped, almost shaking. But Tyran stepped forward. "Callista!" She didn't let him finish. "No." One word, soft but final. Her fingers tightened around her children's hands. "This isn't the time. And definitely not the place." Then she walked away. No apology, no explanation, and he let her go. The storm didn't pass. It followed her all the way home. Callista's apartment, nestled above a quiet piazza with ivy-covered balconies, had always been her sanctuary. Warm light, soft music, the scent of lavender and lemon in the air. But tonight, it felt like a prison of glass, each wall reflecting the past she had hidden too well for too long. She sat by the window wine glass, untouched, her laptop open but useless. The children were asleep, their backpacks tossed near the sofa, Aria's pink headband still on the floor, a mere sketch of Mr. Whitmore resting on the table like an accusation. She had seen the way Tyran looked at them. Recognition, then disbelief. She had known this day might come. Just not so soon. Not this way. And definitely not with her heart still beating so wildly at the sound of his voice. She had buried the memory of that night, convinced herself it was an isolated moment, a brief kindness between strangers. He hadn't given her his name. She hadn't asked. But now, he was everywhere. Her boss, her past, their future. A knock at the door. Her stomach sank. She didn't need to check to know who it was. Still, she opened it. Tyran stood there in the hallway, hands in his coat pockets, like someone trying not to look lost. "I'm not here to make a scene," he said quietly. "Just give me a moment." She exhaled, stepped aside. He entered slowly, eyes sweeping across the apartment, the toys, the books, the subtle evidence of a full life he had never been invited into. "You live well," he murmured. "I live honestly." He turned to her. "You knew who I was." She nodded. "From the moment you walked into that office. Why didn't you say anything?" Her laugh was soft, bitter. "What exactly should I have said?" "Hi. I'm the woman you slept with 5 years ago in Rome. And by the way, meet your children." He flinched. Callista crossed her arms. "Don't act shocked, Tyran. You disappeared. You didn't leave a number, just a sentence that felt like goodbye." "I didn't know," he whispered. "I know." Silence stretched again. But this time, it wasn't hollow. He walked toward the window, hands trembling slightly. "They're mine. They're ours," she corrected gently. "And they've had a good life, a stable one. I never planned to keep them from you. But I never expected to see you again, much less report to you." Tyran leaned against the frame. "I wasn't ready for this." Callista stepped closer. "Neither was I." Then softer. "But they deserve better than a father who runs away twice." He turned sharply. "I'm not running." Her eyes searched his face. "No, I'm still here." He hesitated. "And I want to know them." Her breath caught. "And what does that look like exactly? You fly in on weekends, take them to museums between board meetings, post pictures on Instagram, like some philanthropic billionaire dad." He didn't answer, because the truth was, he didn't know. All he knew was this something fundamental had shifted inside him the moment he saw their faces. A door had opened. One he didn't even know was locked. And now all he could feel was the weight of years lost. "Callista," he said softly, "I can't fix the past, but I don't want to pretend it didn't happen." She looked at him for a long time, and for the first time that night, her voice softened. "They're good kids, bright, kind, curious, everything I hoped they'd be." He nodded. "They deserve to know you, but on their terms, not yours." Tyrion nodded again. "Anything. I'll do whatever you say." Her eyes narrowed, skeptical. "Even if it means stepping away." He hesitated. "If that's what they need. Or you." The truth lingered in the room like a raw nerve. She studied him. "You say that now, but you don't know what this means, what it costs. Loving them. It's not a press release or a business plan. It's messy, exhausting. Some nights, you'll want to walk away." Tyrion's voice cracked. "I already did. Once. Without knowing. I won't do it again." They stood in silence, the night outside thick with rain. Then he reached into his coat, pulled out a folded photograph. It was worn, edges creased. He held it out. Callista took it. It was a photo from Rome. A grainy security cam still from the hotel hallway. Her profile laughing, his arm around her waist. "I kept it," he said, "even when I didn't remember your name." Something inside her broke open. "I thought I imagined that night meant something to you." "It did," he said. "It still does." Later, after he left, Callista sat on the edge of her bed, the photo in her hands. He hadn't begged. He hadn't tried to charm his way in. He had just stood there, open, vulnerable. And that scared her more than any fight would have. Because part of her still loved the man from that night. Not the billionaire. The broken stranger who had needed her warmth and who somehow had given her a reason to believe again. She placed the photo on her nightstand, then glanced at the door, because she knew tonight had changed everything. And tomorrow would demand decisions. The next morning arrived like a betrayal, too bright, too loud, too ordinary. Callista moved through her kitchen in silence, mechanically packing school lunches. The toast burned. She didn't care. Arya hummed under her breath at the table, gently braiding her doll's hair, while Amir scowled at a math problem he insisted was unsolvable. It was a normal morning, familiar, reassuring, and yet nothing felt the same. The air had changed, not just in her apartment, but inside her. Something had cracked open last night when Tyrion stood in her doorway, photograph in hand, his voice rough with memory. She hadn't cried after he left. She hadn't slept either. Her heart had been too full of things she wasn't ready to name. He wanted to know them. He wanted to stay. And she didn't know what scared her more, that he would disappear again, or that he wouldn't. At the office, things had returned to their corporate rhythm. Phones ringing, printers, churning heels, clicking across marble. Florence buzzed with its elegant chaos, emails, deadlines, coffee runs. But when Callista stepped out of the elevator, she knew immediately that something had shifted. People were whispering, not loud enough to be obvious, but just enough for her to catch it in the corner of her awareness. The subtle glances, the long silences when she passed. She reached her desk and found Marco already waiting. "Hey," he said carefully. "Heads up, there's a rumor going around." She tilted her head. "What kind of rumor?" He hesitated. "That you and Tyrion Whitmore knew each other before this job. That there's something between you." Her stomach dropped. She stared at him. "Is he saying that?" "No. No, not him. But someone saw the kids yesterday. And people talk." Callista gritted her teeth. She had been so careful, always keeping work and home separated by steel walls. But all it took was one crack, One afternoon, 2 children with his eyes, and now the walls were crumbling. Marco's voice softened. Look, I don't care what's true or not, but you should be ready. HR might come sniffing. She nodded. Thanks for the warning. He opened his mouth to say something else, then thought better of it and walked away. Callista sat slowly, the weight of invisible eyes pressing down. She had worked too hard to be seen as a mother before a manager, as a woman before a worker. The stigma was subtle, but ever-present, a black woman with children, in a space designed for polished ambition and legacy-born heirs. She was always one breath away from being seen as too emotional, too fragile, too distracted. And now, if the truth came out, if they knew the father of her children was the CEO himself, she would become a spectacle. Tyrion was already in his office, staring at his computer screen without reading a word. His thoughts were fractured, pulled between boardroom priorities and the echo of last night's revelations. He couldn't stop thinking about them. Amir and Arya. The way Arya leaned into her mother's side protectively. The way Amir had tilted his head studying him like a puzzle he half-solved. They were real, and they were his. But so was the Empire, the board. The expectations of being a Whitmore every step watched, every rumor magnified. And now those two worlds were on a collision course. His phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. Board rep from New York arriving this week. Urgent questions about Florence branch restructuring. Also, someone leaked photo of Whitmore with children yesterday. Press is circling. Need strategy. Tyrion stared at the message. He hadn't even touched them. How had this already spun out of control? He stood abruptly and headed to Callista's office. She saw him coming and rose from her chair, expression unreadable. I didn't say anything, she said before he could speak. I know. There are rumors. I know that too. They stared at each other across the desk. You need to decide, she said quietly, what kind of presence you want to have in their lives. Because right now, this half-step in is only going to hurt them and me. His voice was low. I want to be in their lives. Fully. Not for headlines. Not for optics. She studied him. But are you ready for what that means? Not just the parenting. The fallout. The scrutiny. The questions. About me. About them. About why a billionaire heir had children with an anonymous black woman and didn't acknowledge them for years. His face went still. It won't just be messy, she added. It'll be ugly. I don't care. You should. She turned away, pacing, her voice softer now. Do you know what it felt like? Sitting in hospital rooms alone, wondering if I should write to you, wondering if I should prepare my children for a father who may never arrive. I'm here now. Too late. He flinched. She sighed, voice breaking. Maybe not for them, but for me. I don't know if I have space left to trust you. He stepped closer carefully. You don't have to trust me right now. Just let me try. They stood in silence. Then she asked, barely above a whisper, Why are you still here, Tyrion? He didn't answer right away. Just stared at her with something raw in his eyes. Because for the first time in my life, I want something I didn't build. I didn't earn. I didn't even know I was missing. She blinked. I want you, Callista. I want them. And I don't care if it's messy. I just care that it's real. Later that evening, Callista walked home slowly, dusk painting the city in amber and violet. Her heart was a battlefield, parts of it, yearning, others braced for impact. She arrived to the sound of laughter. Inside, Tyrion sat cross-legged on the floor, helping Amir build a tower of magnetic blocks. Arya hovered nearby, watching with cautious joy. It was the first time she had let him through the door since that night. He looked up, smiling softly. "Hope you don't mind," he said. "Your sitter let me in. She figured I passed the background check." Callista didn't smile, but she didn't send him away. Later, as the children dozed in their room, she stood by the doorway, arms crossed. "They're starting to like you." "I'm starting to like them." She nodded, then added, "That scares me more than anything." Tyron approached carefully. "Why?" "Because if you leave again, it won't be just my heart breaking." He looked at her, then gently reached for her hand. "I'm not leaving." She didn't say she believed him, but she didn't let go. Callista had forgotten what it felt like to walk into a room and not be watched. Ever since the rumors broke soft at first, then louder with each passing day, every step she took in the office felt like treading glass. She wasn't just the woman who managed operations anymore. She was that woman. The one with the secret. The one with the children. The one with the boss. Eyes followed her down the hallway. Words died when she entered rooms. Even the women who used to share coffee and kind smiles now offered tight nods and veiled curiosity, as though she had committed some unspeakable breach of etiquette by simply existing with a past. She didn't regret her children, not for a second. But there were days she regretted letting Tyron back into their lives, if only because of what it cost her to be seen beside him. Tyron, for his part, was trying. He came over in the evening sometimes just to help with dinner or watch a cartoon on the floor beside Amir. He never stayed too long, never pushed, just offered presence, steady and quiet. But the air between them was charged with unspoken things. It wasn't love yet. Not again. Maybe not ever. It was something messier, trust being rebuilt in silence, and eyes that lingered a little too long. Callista hated how much she noticed. The way his sleeves rolled just above his forearms. The rasp of his voice when he read bedtime stories. How gently he touched their daughter's hair. She hated how familiar it all felt. How easy it would be to fall again. But the past wasn't done with them. One morning just after school drop-off, she was called into HR. The room was beige, sterile. A single glass of untouched water sat on the table. The head of HR, a lean woman with red lipstick and a smile too professional to trust, gestured to the seat across from her. "Callista, thank you for coming. This is just a routine check-in." Callista didn't flinch. "About what?" The woman folded her hands. "There's been some concern about impropriety. Questions about how long you've known Mr. Whitmore, and whether your prior connection influenced your position here." Callista blinked slowly. There was no prior connection, not in any way that involved this company. "And yet the optics are yours to manage." She cut in, calm but firm. "My work record is clean. My performance reviews exceed expectations. If this is about gossip, perhaps you should address it with those spreading it." The HR rep hesitated, clearly not expecting that level of composure. Callista stood. "If my motherhood offends people more than my merit impresses them, then we're not talking about policy. We're talking about prejudice." She left before they could answer. That night, she didn't let Tyron in. He knocked, waited. She opened the door but didn't move aside. "They came for me today," she said. His jaw tightened. "HR. They questioned my role, my history. Not yours, just mine." Tyron looked away. She stepped outside, closing the door behind her. "You want to be in their lives?" "Tyron, then you need to understand what comes with that. The whispers don't follow you home. They don't question your worth, your morality, your qualifications. I didn't leak anything. I know, but I should have protected you." She sighed. "You can't protect me from the world, but you can stand beside me when it tries to erase me." He was quiet. Then I'm calling a press conference. She startled. What I want to set the record straight. Not just rumors. The truth. About us. About them. On my terms. Her stomach turned. You think that's going to fix this? I think silence is killing us more. Callista crossed her arms. And what exactly do you plan to say? Tyrion stepped forward. That I met a woman 5 years ago. A woman who changed my life without even knowing it. That we had a moment. And from that moment came 2 children, who are the best parts of me. That I didn't know until recently, but now that I do, I'm not hiding them. Or her. She stared at him. That's a nice speech, Tyrion. Sounds like it'll go well on the cover of Forbes. It's not for them. It's for you. She studied his face. The lines of weariness, of sincerity, of fear of losing them before he even had them. And for the first time, something in her softened. You don't need to save my reputation, she said. Just don't ruin theirs. I won't. A beat. And what if the board pushes back? She added. What if investors don't like the story of the young CEO and his secret family? Tyrion looked at her with a steadiness that silenced doubt. Then they can find another CEO. The next morning, Florence woke to headlines. Whitmore heir claims paternity of twins. Meet the woman who changed everything. The photo was tasteful. Just Tyrion looking out a window. No kids. No Callista. But the article was clear. He had confirmed their existence, praised their mother, and asked for privacy going forward. The internet exploded. Some praised him. Others gossiped. A few called it a PR stunt. But the people that mattered, Amir, Arya, Callista, they saw it for what it was. An act of bravery. Or maybe love. Later that week, Callista found a letter on her desk. No envelope. Just folded paper. She unfolded it slowly. I never wanted to be a man defined by legacy, or wealth, or bloodlines. But I look at them, and I see the best version of myself. One I didn't know could exist until they did. You gave me that. You gave me them. And I will spend every day learning how to deserve it. T. She didn't cry. But she closed her office door for a long time. Outside the glass, the office kept moving. But inside her, something finally stilled. A breath. A beginning. 2 weeks passed. The buzz died down, but the ripples remained. Callista walked with a quiet grace through it all. Her chin lifted, her smile subtle but firm. The kind of woman who had weathered storms and didn't flinch at rain. But inside, she was anything but calm. She felt like she was constantly rearranging the sharp edges of her life, trying to make room for something soft again. She wasn't used to soft. Not anymore. Not since Rome. Not since Tyrion. Now, he was everywhere. And it was harder to keep things separate. The children adored him. Arya began drawing him in her crayon family portraits. Amir corrected his last name in class assignments. And Callista had started to let him in. Slowly. Quietly. Like unlocking a door she wasn't sure should have ever been closed, but had to be. Tonight he was late. They had planned a small dinner at her place. Not fancy. Just pasta and the kids' favorite show. A new routine that felt dangerously like a tradition. She stirred the sauce on the stove with one hand and checked her phone with the other. No message, no call. The kids didn't mind. They played in the living room giggling. But Callista felt something tighten inside her. Old patterns, old fears. The doorbell rang 37 minutes later. She opened it with an expression carefully composed between relief and warning. Tyrion stood there, breathless, hair tousled from wind, holding a small bouquet of orange lilies. For being late, he said, offering them. She didn't smile, but she took the flowers. I thought you changed your mind. His brows knit. I told you I wouldn't. That doesn't mean I believe it yet. He nodded, stepping inside. Dinner passed easily. Arya insisted Tyrion do the voices for every character in the cartoon. Amir quizzed him on trivia he had clearly Googled. Laughter echoed. But later, after the kids were tucked in and the dishes were done, Callista poured herself a glass of wine and leaned against the counter. Tyrion lingered in the doorway. "You're thinking something," he said. She took a sip. "I'm always thinking something." "About me." She glanced at him. "About everything." He moved closer. "You don't have to keep testing me, Callista. I'm not going anywhere." She raised a brow. "It's not about testing you. It's about not losing myself in this again." "In what this?" She gestured vaguely between them. The illusion of a perfect story, reconnection, redemption. It all feels so neat. And life never is. He stepped forward. "You think I'm here for a story?" "No." She met his eyes. "But I think part of you still doesn't understand what this costs me. Every day I let you in a little more, I risk becoming someone I've worked hard to protect. Protect from what? From being a fool." He was quiet for a moment. Then softly, "I was the fool, Callista, not you." The room was too quiet, the wine in her glass forgotten. He moved closer, slowly, carefully. His fingers brushed hers. "I'm not asking you to forget what I did. I'm asking you to believe what I'm doing." She looked at his hand, then his face. The familiar lines, the dimple in his chin, the eyes that had haunted her for 5 years. Still did. "I don't know how to love you again," she whispered. He stepped even closer, his voice rough. "Then let's start with letting me hold you." She didn't answer, but she didn't move away. When he touched her, it wasn't a kiss, not yet. It was just his arms around her. Just the quiet press of two bodies carrying too much. His warmth against the cold edges of her doubt. His breath on her shoulder steady and real. She stood there a long time, not leaning in, but not pulling back either. And maybe that for tonight was enough. Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, she finally exhaled. But neither of them noticed the shadow moving across the street, the glint of a long lens camera, the soundless click. The world was still watching, and someone out there wasn't ready to let them live quietly. Callista woke to the sharp chime of her phone vibrating against the nightstand. A text. Unknown number. "Nice night with the boss. Thought you liked privacy. X." She sat up, pulse racing. Another message followed, a photo attachment. The image loaded slowly. Grainy dark, but unmistakable. Her front porch. Her body wrapped in Tyrion's arms. Her face buried in his shoulder. Vulnerable. Real. A flash of heat surged through her chest. Shame. Anger. Fear. Someone was watching them. She didn't tell Tyrion right away. Instead, she spent the morning in silence, her body present, but her mind caught in spirals. She packed lunches on autopilot, smiled at the children, dropped them off with a kiss and a distracted wave. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Someone had crossed a line, not just into her privacy, but into her safety. She stared at the message again and again, trying to read between the venom. Was it personal? A journalist fishing for scandal, a colleague, someone from Tyrion's world, from hers. Either way, it meant one thing. This wasn't just about love anymore. It was about protection. At the office, Tyrion was already in meetings when she arrived. She avoided him. She needed space to think, to plan. By midday, a courier delivered an envelope to her desk. No name, just her first initial handwritten. She opened it in the stairwell, away from eyes. Inside, a printout of the same photo from the text, and beneath it in black marker, "Careful what kind of story you tell. Not all endings are happy." Callista pressed a hand to her mouth. Her mind raced. This wasn't random. It was a warning. She waited until after hours to tell Tyran. He read the note without speaking, then looked up, face taut. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I didn't want to believe it was real." His voice dropped. "We need to call security. Investigators, we need to keep our kids out of this," she snapped. "If it escalates, we don't hide," he said firmly. "Not anymore." Callista stepped back. "You think this is just a scandal to manage? I think it's a threat. It is a threat, which is why we fight it." She shook her head, voice cracking. "I've lived my whole life fighting to be safe, to be respected. You were the first risk I allowed myself in years, and now someone's turning that into leverage." Tyran softened. "Callista, this isn't your burden to carry alone." She stared at him. "Yes, it is. Because if something happens to our children, it won't be your name they question. It'll be mine. The black woman with a hidden agenda. The one who trapped a billionaire. That's the narrative the world is waiting to write." Tyran went still. It wasn't the first time he'd heard those words, not exactly. But hearing them now in her voice with that edge of grief and fire, it sunk deeper. "You're right," he said quietly. She blinked. "I can't erase that risk. But I can stand beside you while you face it. Every step." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Callista froze. "Tyran, what?" "It's not a proposal," he said. "Not yet." He opened it. Inside a pendant. Not flashy. Elegant. Modern. A small circular gold disc with 2 engraved initials, A and A, intertwined. "I had it made," he said. "For you. For them. A reminder that you don't carry this alone." She stared at it. Her throat thickened. It was simple, but it felt like a promise. Not of forever. Not yet. But of trying. She took the pendant, held it to her palm. Then, without a word, she stepped into his arms. This time she leaned in. The next morning, Callista filed a report with building security. Tyran hired a private investigator within the hour. Discreet. Expensive. Effective. They didn't tell the children. But Callista started locking every window. She changed her route to work. Not out of paranoia, out of maternal instinct. She had lived through too many quiet terrors to ignore the signs. That night, Tyran stayed after the children went to bed. They sat on the couch, not touching, just breathing the same air. "I keep thinking," he said, "that if this had never happened, if we had never reconnected, you would still be safe." She looked at him. "No, I'd just still be alone." He turned to her. "Do you regret letting me in?" She considered. "No," she said. "But I do regret not being ready for what came with you." They didn't speak again for a long time. Outside, Florence was a hush of distant Vespas and soft jazz spilling from balconies. Inside, 2 people sat in the quiet understanding that love was never a shield, only a choice, and every day they would choose it again, even if the world watched, even if it burned. Florence was restless that night. Wind rattled the shutters of Callista's apartment, carrying the scent of rain, and something colder, something that felt like a warning. Inside, the living room glowed with soft lamplight, but warmth didn't settle. It hovered, fragile and temporary, like a candle fighting a draft. Callista stood at the window, arms folded, staring down at the narrow street below. Every flash of headlights made her tense. Every shadow that lingered too long made her palms sweat. She hadn't slept. Not really. Every sound woke her now. The messages, the photo, the threat. They burrowed under her skin. Behind her, the floor creaked. "Couldn't sleep either?" Tyran asked quietly. She shook her head. "I didn't want to wake you." "You didn't." He stepped beside her, gaze drifting to the street. "I've been thinking about hiring a full-time security team," she sighed. "And what? Have strangers follow my children to school. Stand in our doorway. I don't want them growing up thinking the world is a battlefield." His voice deepened. "It is one. When someone's targeting you." "Targeting us," she corrected softly. They stood in silence, the weight of the distinction settling between them. He turned to her. "I won't let anything happen to you." Callista let out a breath that trembled. "Don't promise that. Not unless you're ready to understand what it means." His brows furrowed. "What does it mean?" She looked at him with weary, knowing eyes. "It means choosing us even when it gets ugly. Even when your family questions you. Even when investors pull out. Even when the world turns this into a spectacle and paints me as something I'm not." Taran stepped closer. "I've made my choice." "Have you?" she whispered. "Or are you still trying to convince yourself it's the right one?" He opened his mouth, but a sharp buzz from his phone cut him off. He frowned and checked it. A message. From a board member. "Need clarification ASAP. New York Times wants comments about the woman and her children. Someone gave them dates. Details. Some inconsistent. Handle it before this explodes." Callista saw his face tighten. "What is it?" "Someone's feeding the press," he said. "Someone with access. Someone who knows too much." She closed her eyes. "God." He looked at her, searching. "There's more." His thumb hovered over another message. Then he showed her. A new leaked story headline. "Whitmore heir's secret lover has questionable past, exclusive interview coming." Callista's heart dropped. "No," she whispered. No, who?" She didn't finish, because suddenly it hit her, hard. A name she hadn't spoken in years. A face she hoped she'd never see again. Her ex, Jordan. Tyrion saw the change in her expression. "You know who did this?" She nodded slowly, breath shaking. "Jordan always wanted control. Even after I left, he found ways to watch, to bother me, to make sure I knew he was still around." Tyran's jaw clenched. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I thought he'd stop." "And did he?" She swallowed. "Not really." Rage flickered in Tyron's eyes, quiet, contained, but fierce. "That man is threatening you. Threatening our family. He's threatening my reputation," she corrected. "People like him don't need violence to ruin a woman. They use words, stories, twisted truths." Tyron faced her fully. "Tell me everything." She hesitated. Not because she didn't trust him, but because saying the past out loud meant letting it live again. Still, she breathed deeply and spoke. "Jordan and I were together for 3 years. At first he was charming, supportive. Then he changed. He criticized everything. My clothes, my job, my voice. He said I wasn't worth being loved unless I made myself smaller." Tyron's fists curled. "He never hit me," she continued. "But sometimes words do worse. They echo longer." Tyron moved closer. "He doesn't get to echo anymore." Her voice softened. "When I got pregnant, he wanted me to get rid of them. Said the timing was wrong. Said I was ruining my future." "And you left him?" "Yes." She swallowed hard. "But men like him never really let go. He probably saw the press conference and realized he could use it." Tyron shook his head. "This ends now." Callista stepped back. "No, you won't confront him. That's exactly what he wants. A headline, a scandal, a story to twist. So what do we do?" She pressed her palms to her face. "I don't know. I just know I'm tired." He lowered her hands gently. "You're not doing this alone anymore, whether you like it or not." She gave him a look, half exhaustion, half gratitude. Hours later, after the children fell asleep, they sat together on the balcony. Florence sparkled beneath them, city lights flickering like scattered stars. Callista leaned against the railing, eyes distant. "I spent years rebuilding myself," she said softly, "piece by piece, slow and quiet. And now it feels like everything is shaking again." "Because of me," he whispered. She looked at him, the city reflected in her eyes. "Because of us." He stepped behind her close enough that she felt his breath on her shoulder. "I'm not afraid," he said. "Not of him. Not of any story. The only thing I'm afraid of is losing you." Her pulse trembled. "You didn't have me to lose. I do now." Silence. A deep, slow silence. Then she turned to him. There was no anger left, no fear, at least not the kind that pushed him away. Just a raw, tender vulnerability she had hidden for too long. "What are we doing?" "Taryn," she asked. "Something real and dangerous. All the best things are." She let out a soft, shaking laugh. Then their foreheads touched. A quiet, fragile intimacy. Not a kiss, but something deeper. A promise without words. Just as she leaned into him, his phone buzzed again. He exhaled, frustrated, pulling it out. Another message. From the investigator. He read it. His face changed. "What is it?" she asked, already fearing the answer. He looked at her, voice low. "Jordan isn't working alone." A chill crawled up her spine. "Then who is?" He handed her the phone. She stared at the message. Then her blood ran cold. The leak came from inside the Florence office. Someone close. Someone with direct access to both of you. She looked up at him, her voice a whisper. "Someone here wants to destroy us." Morning came softly, the kind of golden light Florence only offered after a long storm, gentle, forgiving, full of promise. For the first time in weeks, Callista felt her heartbeat steady as she watched the sun spill over the rooftops. The shadows were still there, lingering in edges she couldn't fully erase, but light had finally found its way between them. Taryn arrived early, carrying 2 cups of coffee and an expression that was both cautious and hopeful. The children were still asleep, the apartment quiet, except for the faint hum of the city waking. "I didn't want to assume you'd want me here this morning," he said. "But you came anyway," she replied. "I did." Callista took the coffee, fingers brushing his. A small, grounding moment. A reminder that tenderness didn't have to be fragile. "Sit with me," she whispered. They stood on the balcony, watching Florence shift from night to day. For a long while, neither spoke. Silence had always been dangerous for them, too much room for fear, regret, memory. But now it felt different. Calm. Shared. "I've spoken to the board," Taryn said finally. "And the investigators. Marco has confessed. Jordan's involvement is documented. The press will retract the worst of it." Callista's shoulders loosened only slightly, but enough. "And you?" she asked quietly. "What does this mean for you?" Taryn exhaled. "I turned down the CEO nomination." She jerked to face him. "Taryn." He reached out, cupping her cheek with a gentleness so deliberate it made her breath catch. "I don't want a life that requires me to sacrifice the people I love. I've chased titles my whole life. The only thing I've ever lost by doing that was you." Callista pressed her lips together, emotion rising like a tide she couldn't hold back. "You didn't lose me," she whispered. "You just forgot how to stand still long enough to see me." He closed his eyes briefly, letting her words sink deeper. "Then let me stand still now," he murmured. She stepped closer until their foreheads touched. "Taryn, we can't build a future out of fear. Not mine, not yours. I don't want to build anything without you. The truth sat between them, simple, steady, and finally unburdened. Later that afternoon, they took the children to the gardens near Piazzale Michelangelo. The air was soft, filled with laughter from wandering tourists and the distant warmth of violin music. Aria raced ahead toward the flowers. Amir pretended not to race after her. Callista watched them, her heart full in a way she'd nearly forgotten was possible. "They're happy," Tyrion said. "They feel safe," she answered. "And you?" She turned to him, her smile small but certain. "I'm learning." He let out a breath he'd been holding for months. "Then let me keep creating space for you to learn," he said softly. "At your pace, in your time." Callista slipped her hand into his. Warm, solid, chosen. "I want us," she said. "Not the headlines, not the fear, just us." For the first time since they reunited, he didn't rush the moment. He didn't close the distance all at once. He simply held her hand, as though anchoring both of them to something real. That evening, after the children fell asleep, safe, loved, unaware of the battles fought in their name, Tyrion led Callista to the rooftop of his building. The sky flickered with the last streaks of sunset. "I have something for you," he said. She chuckled softly. "If it's another pendant, I swear it's not." His voice turned warm, nervous, human. He pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was a key. A simple one. Silver, unadorned. Callista blinked. "Tyrion," he swallowed. "This key opens my home. But it's not a demand. It's an invitation. To come when you want. To stay when you choose. To leave it unused if you need to. I want you to have a place that's yours. Ours. Without expectation. Without pressure." A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. She brushed it away, laughing breathlessly. "You think giving me space will make me run. I think giving you freedom will make you stay." Callista took the key, and then took his face in both hands. "You stubborn, foolish, beautiful man," she murmured. "I'm not running. Not anymore." He kissed her, not with desperation, but with relief, with gratitude, with the steady, certain love of someone who finally understood what it meant to stay. When they parted, the last of the sunlight glowed across her skin. "What do we do now?" she whispered. Tyrion smiled, brushing his thumb over her lower lip. "Now," he said, "we begin." And for the first time, truly, fully, Callista believed him.